I can help if you don't mind dropping it in the chat.
Thank you, Jessica.
Very grateful, Jess.
Be a drink next time we all can get together.
What was that?
Be a drink next time we're all together. That'll be a little while, so it'll be plenty of time for me to forget.
Okay, should we get started? Welcome everyone to the RATS session number 2. And so I'm presenting the agenda for today. So we'll basically what we have in store is the EAT adoption status from Lawrence. We'll take 5 minutes for that. And then we have an overview of the EAT profiles topic. Lawrence is also on tap for that one. And then third is a discussion about how CoSWID and EAT go together, and so we have plenty of time allocated for that. So if there's time, I think we will try and the trails will do an update, a brief update on the milestones progress. Any other topics we need to consider? Okay, if not, then we will dive right in. So, Lawrence, I think you're up next. Are you here?
Ned, are we going to do milestones too, or at the end?
At the end, yeah.
Okay, just not seeing it.
I don't have slides, so.
I sent you one earlier.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll try and work on that during the talk then.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Get to the right spot here. Lawrence, you're up.
You're on mute, Lawrence. Lawrence, you're still on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Ah, yes.
Yeah, okay. Separate for video and audio. Okay.
Correct.
Next slide, please. So this is the same slide from last time. Just a list of the things that I think should be in EAT, the set of claims that we should be having in EAT. That's kind of in the EAT draft. That's the ones we want to standardize for the EAT draft. Can be lots of claims after this, in the registry, but this is the plan. What I'm planning for to complete the EAT draft. Next slide. So this is the status of and progress on all of those. So we've had a little bit of progress on the hardware identification. And it's nearly done. We've had a little bit of progress on GPS location. There was some refinement there, and I think it's nearly done. Then the intended use claim was added to the draft, and the profile claim was added to the draft. That I'll go over today in some detail. Then there was a bit of a few little modifications to submodules and nested EATs, and I think those are in pretty good shape. I have an implementation of that, and I think Thomas was working on an implementation of that. Then last time we talked about public keys, and that's been added to the draft. So the big areas where we have work to be where there's work to be done is CoSWID, measurements, and then the identifying the verifier input, which is endorsements and key IDs. So we talked about. Go to the next slide. Oh yeah, and then there's other than work on specific claims, I still need to do a substantial rework in relation to the RATS architecture, so it uses the terminology. We want to say that EAT can be used for attestation results, maybe some claims for attestation results, but I haven't really done any work on that. I want to do some examples and then a verification procedure. This is similar to what was last IETF. Next slide. So just a short change, a list of changes. The UEIDs are now based on the IMEI based UEIDs are now 14-byte strings. The submodules now a CWT submodule is allowed in a JWT and vice versa. And the how CBOR tags are to be used in a like when you put a CWT module inside a CWT module, how the tagging works. We added the cryptographic keys in claims, added the hardware version claims, some tweaks for debug status, added the intended use claim. There's improvements on the location claim, added the boot seed claim. Then there was a bunch of rework on the CBOR interoperability section, and then added profiles. So a lot of the work to be done is, as I said, on SWIDs, CoSWIDs, and measurements, and we'll get into that later. And then there's also a fair bit of work to be done on endorsements and key IDs. And most of that is going to be just frame up. I have a pull request on that. I don't intend to actually define an endorsement format. Next slide. Yeah, so we talked about verifier input at 109, but nothing has happened since. And then nothing on attestation results and measurements, not really either. I think I did put a pull request out there, but it's not very developed. So that's it for status. Any comments and questions on status? Okay. If not, then let's keep going. Next slide. So this is about the profile claim. Next slide. So this is, to me, this is about actually getting to interoperating implementations of EAT. So the EAT protocol, or EAT, describes, it's got a lot of options. I mean, you know, and it has all these options to work in lots of different environments and lots of different use cases. Some of them have to do with, you know, whether it's constrained device. Are you using this on a constrained device, or are you using this to report results between cloud services? For example, for the two extremes, you know, something and two things that are very different. So constrained device, you want very few claims, very small representation. Moving data between cloud services, you probably are happy with that JSON, and you might have lots and lots of claims. Some of this optionality is inherited from CoSWID and from CWT. You know, for example, CoSWID supports lots of algorithms, and you need to narrow down to pick, you know, one or two algorithms or a set of algorithms somehow, so you actually have interoperability. You know, CWT claims are all the claims are optional. There is no round trips in EAT. So negotiation is not possible. I mean, I guess you could add it, but in some form, but we're not specifying anything there. So we have this set up so that two implementations of EAT may not necessarily interoperate. One could be using JSON, the other CBOR. They could have different means of identifying the verification key, signing algorithm. They could choose different signing algorithms. They could choose different variants of CBOR encoding format, like definite length versus indefinite length. So, yeah, next slide. So the EAT profile, the idea of an EAT profile is to narrow the definition of EAT and to the point where you have guaranteed interoperability. It kind of surprises me that we don't do more of this, particularly around CoSWID and CBOR, because like a lot, the characteristics of the issues here would arise for any protocol using CoSWID and CBOR. And this is IETF, so I think we are after interoperability. So I've gone a fair ways down the path here to recommend what should be in an EAT profile. We don't have any example EAT profiles yet, but so what the text in the document does is list all the things that an EAT profile should specify. So an EAT profile is, at this point, it's a human readable text document. It's not anything machine readable or anything like that. It narrows the EAT, CWT, CoSWID, and JWT options to result in an interoperable protocol. The document may be either an IETF standard or IETF informational or such. It could be some other standard like FIDO or VP. Could be vendor proprietary. It could be private. Just being completely open here about what an EAT profile document could be. I mean, it could be in the set of documents, or you could even a hierarchy of documents. There is a claim defined, an EAT claim defined that names the EAT profile. You can either name it as an OID or a URI. That claim is not required. It's just a helpful hint for parties to know which profile is in use. And the format of the name document is text. It's not standardized for machine processing. So the profile addresses four major things: serialization format, protection, like whether the EAT is signed or encrypted, or signed and encrypted, or not protected. It addresses key identification, and it addresses what claims are required and prohibited. And after yesterday's discussion, I'm actually thinking freshness and replay protection need to be added. Next. So serialization, so it says whether you could use CBOR or JSON or both, and how the nesting can work. Like if your main format is CBOR, is it okay to nest a JWT or JSON token in the CBOR, or vice versa? For CBOR, it narrows whether you're using definite and indefinite length for maps and arrays and strings. and it says how to use CBOR tags. Next slide. I should say the profile says this is a topic you should address. It doesn't address it. The discussion of profile in the EAT document just says these are things you need to think about when you're making a profile. So it says your profile should say what kind of protection you're requiring, whether it is signing, encryption, MAC, and then there are the unsecured options for UCCS and then unsecured JWTs. Profile should indicate, that sentence is not very good there. Integrity protection, privacy protection, do you sign, do you encrypt? Is it symmetric encryption or public key based? It should list algorithms. Probably the right way to do that is the list that the attester or the verifier must implement, and then the tester can pick one of those or one or more of those. Okay, screen share is back. So the profile should be tight enough that there's an interoperability guaranteed when both the attester and verifier implement it. Next slide. So key identification is, how does the verifier get the verification key, and what information is in the EAT token. Perhaps it's through an endorsement, perhaps it's not. There are a number of ways to identify a key. So you could do CoSWID key ID in an endorsement, by a claim like the UEID, perhaps something else. So the profile should say how that happens. Next slide. And then last, since the claims are optional, a profile probably is going to require some claims to be present and say verification can fail if not. Profile might prohibit some claims, probably because of privacy reasons. A profile can describe new claims and add them to the registry or not. And a profile may allow optional claims, and in that case, verification wouldn't fail if they're present. I also should have added here, a profile can narrow a claim. So, you might say, or refine a claim. So for example, in the location claim, some things like accuracy are optional. So a profile could say that they are not optional. Most claims right now are really simple. I think when we get to the CoSWID, that's a much more complicated thing. So I believe that is all I had. Let's go for next slide, please. Okay, so that's all I had for profiles. Before going to CoSWID, Dave?
Yeah, I just want to say that that's a great list. I think that the TEEP working group is the first, customer of RATS. And so the TEEP protocol spec itself is kind of the first candidate profile, as I understand it. And so this is a great list of requirements that the TEEP protocol spec should cover, of which it covers some, but not all of these. That's why I thought this was a great list. I guess there's a meta question is, do you think that a profile that as you start to have other using protocols and things, do you think that a protocol would typically itself specify what profile it is, or do you envision there be that profiles be something that that protocols would negotiate to say which profile is it. I'm asking what you think is the more typical use case. I think in TEEP, we probably just want to nail the TEEP protocol itself is a profile. There's only one set of things, and the TEEP protocol itself specifies it. But do you have any guesses as to what you think is typical for what documents might use profiles and how many?
I don't have much to say about that actually. I mean, it seems like it could vary a lot by context.
Yeah. Hey, it's Gary here. Sorry, I missed I couldn't do the raise hand feature. So Dave, I can say at least in our internal production, we're running into situations where it has to be essentially some sort of declarative measure. It can't be negotiable. And so that's particularly in the case where an EAT is being used in the context of a device that lacks IP connectivity. So you can think of maybe a device that's listening on the Bluetooth low energy advertising channel, but and is requested to send back up an attestation through a unicast connection. So in that case, we just don't negotiate. We need to get that attestation up right away. It's assumed that the relying party would be able to process whatever profile would be declared inside of the EAT payload.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, you're getting to the point of my question, because Lawrence, you'd mentioned that a claim can specify in the EAT which profile the EAT was generated by, right? But of course, there's no negotiation mechanism, and so would a protocol ever need something in another direction that would need to declare what set of profiles that are expected? Or would a protocol just mandate, nope, here's the protocol, you better be passing an EAT that has the following profile claim, and if you narrow it to only one, then is the profile claim actually a required claim, or can a profile say that that claim is absent because the protocol is only allowed to pass EATs that have a particular profile? I think that's kind of the other half of the question.
Okay. I mean, I would imagine all those things are possible depending on, like the FIDO protocol or the whatever GP is using or TEEP is using, or so
yep. Sounds
what
good.
I
I think I will take this as to file an issue against the TEEP protocol spec to put in text to make sure we match all of the set of requirements for a EAT profile. That's what I'm going to take away from this, which is why I thought it was a great list. So thanks.
Yeah. What makes me think maybe we should add some text that says, protocols that carry EATs, can choose between locking down to one profile, having a profile negotiation if the protocol can support it. I mean, I'll probably propose some text for that and see how it flies. Okay, Hank.
Hi, Lawrence. This is Hank. Quick question, the first question basically, how do you want to express profiles?
You mean like the format of the profile document?
Yeah, if I want to create a profile, you say, for example, you could make a map member more narrow, and therefore mandate its existence instead of optional existence. So I want to do that now. How do I express that?
Well, right now, any way you want. I mean, you could do it in Chinese. You could do it in, a Rust program. It's completely open-ended. I haven't really tried to narrow that at all.
Okay, so then specify a little bit. I'm an IETF ID author, and I want to create profile text in my ID.
Yeah, so write something down.
Okay.
I'm open to some other suggestions here, but I didn't want to narrow it at all. I suppose we could come up with some sort of a convention for doing it, but I didn't have any particular thoughts on how to do that.
So I'm bringing up this question because it reminds me of, and I think that's a subset of your problem statement, is that we have this very versatile CoSWID envelope, and you, if you mandate that is implemented, you have to implement that YANA algorithm list, and that's probably not always going to happen. So what we're doing right now for CoSWID is actually to rewrite the whole CoSWID spec and just cherry pick what we want from that. So like there's always, of course, the central envelope. There's the tag, for example, messages or keys or something in CoSWID. And then we cherry pick the unprotected and protected stuff and put them into our liking and rewrite the whole CDDL. And if I look at this like from your point of view now, I would say that's a profile for CoSWID use. You could restrict the number of the accepted values for algorithm IDs. You could say, I only want these two optional and that one mandatory and nothing else and such. So I think if you rewrite that somehow is already a profile, at least for the scope of CoSWID. Would you agree, or is there something that I'm missing?
Yeah, I suppose you could do it that way. I was not the way and I think I've seen that in the CoSWID draft.
For example,
I thought that was a little. I mean, that wasn't my initial thought to do it. My initial thought was just to say, use text to describe how you want CoSWID to be used. And I mean, my thought also is, CoSWID should be. For a lot of these things, you should allow this variety of signing and encryption. I mean, like CWT does. Okay. I don't know, Thomas.
Maybe there's some middle ground here. Sorry, so step in here just for a second now. So I think writing something in English text when you can have a formal language is not a good idea anymore. Because then imprecision kicks in and interoperability lacks and suffers at some point, maybe. And if you're very precise in what you expect to be in the message, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Thomas?
No, just to echo what Hank was saying, I think we could. So your list of requirements is so precise that we could come up with, for example, a draft template in Markdown or in XML, RFC, with all the sections pre-populated, and you just fill in the blanks and stuff like that. That might be an option to semi-automate the thing, because if you're talking CDDL, Hank, then constraining a type is not that easy. I mean, it's not like JSON schema where you can override a type and apply more constraint on that. CDDL doesn't seem to be prone to that kind of manipulation at the moment. I mean, CDDL 2.0 will be another thing, I suppose.
No. That is. I think the profile is restating your subset in CDDL. How can you not restrict a type there?
Okay, if you rewrite completely, yes. But yeah, okay.
Well, how if you write it in English text, you would end up with the same content as you would do in a complete rewrite, right? Because everything you touch and you have to mention, you have to write. And I think that in the content of the English text, you would find the exact same thing when you write it in the CDDL.
That is true, but that doesn't apply to every single dimension of the profiling, right? It does apply to the constraining of types, and I agree with you, but other dimensions are not covered by CDDL. So there still need to be some English text somewhere, and that's what I'm trying to say.
I suppose that's correct, because I'm just talking about CoSWID. I'm not talking, for example, about how to deal with the freshness overhead that is not expressed in IETF, for example. Of course, that is not there. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Hannes?
I would like to disagree with Hank here, because having looked at this from a deep point of view, as we discussed in the earlier session today, like it's these simple things of saying something like, we don't use encrypt 0, but only use encrypt. I don't think it needs any CDDL to do that. I think we are sort of doing overkill here. It's just like I had to realize working on the CoSWID spec, and the same applies to what Lawrence said to other specs as well, is that some were not meant to be limited in any shape or form. They just specified everything that came to the mind of the author or the working group at that time. And so instead of listing these 20 options, you say, like, for that profile, you just use one.
So sorry to kick in here again, but yes, exactly. You say that. You say your start message is just one type, and you write CoSWID, and then you go from there, CoSWID 0, for example, and you go from there. I think even in CDDL, it is like 25% the number of characters than in English text, because you have to write, and in your message you must, and then you can also write in CDDL start message equals CoSWID 0, and you have your rule, that's done. So I still
I understand your excitement for CDDL, Hank, but I think you're going overboard here. I think what Lawrence is saying that, hey, we have too many options. We somehow need to sort of reduce it. And if you write the profile and use CDDL to describe what you want an implementer to do, then that's fine, maybe for you and maybe not for someone else. I don't think we should mandate it has to be done in CDDL.
No, maybe not mandating, but I think for the initial exercise, we should put it side by side and look at both versions and see how their expressiveness is okay or not. How does that sound?
Having now spent last week implementing the CoSWID stuff, like for the firmware encryption, I can tell you that like it's full of CoSWID, it's full of CDDL, but it's not a very readable document. So.
But that might be
your enthusiasm.
No, that might be the fact that the CoSWID has this extraction script implied that provides you with the complete full CDDL. We diverged from that since CoSWID. I was not a big fan of that. We always have a redundant block of the full CDDL for implementers, and then the fragments broken out as is done at CoSWID. Reassembling them is a little bit tricky and annoying, I think, personally, but I think Jim also had a point that if you can't extract that, maybe you shouldn't implement that. But that was another, I think, approach to readability.
Okay.
Have you implemented the CoSWID spec, Hank?
Not the CoSWID key stuff that you were asking about. Sorry, no, only the message stuff, yes.
So, I mean, my takeaway here is that we still need to allow open description of English. Some people just may not want to do it in CDDL. Some people may be very JSON-oriented or something, and JWT. But there's definitely opportunity to use CDDL to narrow it in certain circumstances. Okay, I want to move on to the next here. Any last comments? Okay, on to CoSWIDs. And I framed this up as a discussion because I'm kind of sort of figuring this out stuff myself. So my slides are mostly framing, and I haven't written any text yet or anything. So my first thought here is that there's actually kind of two forms of descriptions of software that we're talking about. So there's descriptions of software that were created outside the device, and then there's descriptions of software that were created on the device. So the ones created outside the device are likely signed by the manufacturer. They are put on the device during software installation. I think this is sometimes called a manifest. And I believe these should be relayed to the verifier. So relay, I use the term relay to sort of say that this is, you know, the attester is not creating the thing. They just taking what was installed, copying it into a claim and sending it to the verifier. And it may contain references for measurements. Whereas a description of software created on the device, it's run by or made by code running on the device. It's going to be signed as part of the attestation. It might contain measurements. It's kind of an on-the-fly inventory of software on the device. So, and this is, my interest here is in, what claims go in an EAT. So there's uses for SWIDs and CoSWIDs and lists of software outside of these two, but I'm just focused on what's going into an EAT that's going from an attester to a verifier. And I've started looking at CoSWIDs and SWIDs, and I haven't looked at suit manifests or comids yet, but my initial thought right now is that EAT should support CoSWIDs, and possibly with some extensions, or allowing extensions, and perhaps some others. I mean, we don't have to just pick one official format and only support it, although it would be nice to pick one that is widely used. So we don't want, having 1,000 flowers blooming here doesn't help interoperability. Next slide. Next slide. Can you still hear me? Okay, reconnecting. All right. Here's what I'm proposing. Oh, go back, please. There we go. Thank you. Is that EAT must be able to carry CoSWIDs. The individual CoSWIDs may or may not be signed, or may not be encrypted. So you could have unsigned CoSWID, or you could have signed CoSWIDs. Whether you do that depends on, you could say that in a profile, or how, how that particular system and that particular software base is working. I'm hoping to avoid XML SWIDs, because that would be another format that the verifier has to decode. I would hope that the signing and encryption format for CoSWIDs is COSE, basically done the same way that it's done for CWT, and the cool thing there would be to be able to reuse the code that processes signing and encryption of CWTs for processing, signing, and encryption of CoSWIDs. And then whether they're a payload CoSWID or an evidence CoSWID, which I believe is, my understanding is that the two things I distinguished at the beginning, whether it was created by the software creator, that's a payload CoSWID. If it's created on the device, it's an evidence CoSWID. I might be wrong about that, but my understanding is there are Booleans inside the CoSWID that can tell you which one that is. So then I've got 3 options for how to put CoSWIDs into EAT. We know we have to carry more than one CoSWID because there's 2 different types, and if you're putting CoSWIDs on that represent installed software, there could be many software packages installed, so you can't just have one CoSWID to describe it all, because those were created independently and signed independently, so you have to relay all of them. So one option is a single claim called CoSWIDs, and it's an array, and then you look inside the CoSWID to figure out what they are. You just pile them all into one array. The second option is to just say you can put CoSWIDs into EAT and then not create any claims at all in the EAT spec, and leave it up to profiles and other folks to define claims that carry CoSWID. So this is similar to how the public key text ended up in EAT. A third option would be to have a single claim for the evidence CoSWID, and a single claim for the payload CoSWID, and then handle multiple CoSWIDs via EAT submodules. So if you had 3 installed packages that you wanted to relay the CoSWIDs for, you'd create 3 EAT submods, one for each of the applications there. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, yeah, so go back, please. I've also been having a side discussion about CoSWIDs. They're somewhat file system oriented, and seems like you could that doesn't work for all devices. Seems like you could work around that by extensions. Another thing I thought that in the phone world, a lot of the software is in form of applications. So CoSWID doesn't have anything that describes an application, that is specifically isolated and separate from other applications and has its own kind of identity. And I think TEEs also have a strong notion of applications for installed trusted apps. Okay, so that's about all I had to say. Dave?
Yeah, just making sure you can hear me now. My question is, you have 3 options on the slide. Are you saying that all 3 options are supported, or is there a question to the working group about which option should be allowed? Or I couldn't understand what the 3 options were. Who is the chooser of the option?
Yes, it's a question to the working group.
Okay. In that case, to the extent that I understand it, so there might be things that I didn't quite follow, but I think option number 3 is probably the cleanest. Option number 2 is the next cleanest, and I don't like option 1.
Okay, cool. Hank?
Hi, this is Hank. I can see why you want to have 2 different claims for evidence and payload tags. As long as they are tagged on the CBOR encoding the same way, I mean the CoSWID tags, I guess that's fine. But my question is, why can't you do the array thing from option 1 with these 2 claims in option 3? Why do you have there to do the submodules? That's a little bit confusing to me.
I'm pretty open to all this. If there's an option 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, sure. Yeah. Let's go for it. Discussion.
Hank, let me elaborate on why I said the preference. And that's, I hypothesize it will be common in protocols that you'll want to have some information about, some additional information about each CoSWID that's not beyond that which is embedded in the CoSWID itself. Okay. And so in option number 1, you can't do that without having something like a parallel array or duplicating the CoSWID into some other structure too. So that's why I don't like option 1, is if you need to pass anything that's on a per CoSWID basis, you can't do it in option number 1 without doing option number 2 or 3. So that's why I said I didn't like number 1. Okay. If you only have the list of CoSWIDs, then it's all the same, right? It doesn't matter which option you choose. Option 1 is fine. But I hypothesize that it is common to have additional information you want to pass about each CoSWID. And in that case, I believe you have to go to option 2 or 3 anyway. And between those, I'd say, if this is the part that I'm not sure I completely understood the difference between 2 and 3 correctly, but I think I did. And option number 3, you're doing the metadata about each CoSWID, 1 per submodule. And so it's like, nesting EAT structures and things where each CoSWID could have an arbitrary set of claims with it. That's what I think is the cleanest way to do it. I think that matches well to things like layered attestation, where you have a CoSWID per layer, for example, and you have a set of claims about each layer, and you can reuse the same claim IDs about, I don't know, timestamp or time since boot or time since that software has been running, things like that. You could reuse the same thing in each submodule. I think that would be fine. That's why I think 3 is the cleanest, if I understand it right, just because you can embed arbitrary metadata along with each CoSWID in option number 3. I think if I understand right, you could do that in 2 as well. But the letting profiles define specific claims came across to me as harder than reusing standard claims along with each one and bundling it somehow, which is how I interpreted option 3. So that's why I said my preference is to say you can have multiple of them, and with each CoSWID, you can have another set of EAT claims, including standard ones or private ones or whatever else. And my understanding is submodules let you do that already, and so that's the long reason for my preference for 3. Hopefully I got my assumptions right, but if not, then you can at least understand what my preference is and map them to something else, if that's option 4 or something. So
Yeah, so I'm basically looking for input to go write some text on. So, and then we'll discuss the text.
Yeah, okay,
And
so I think sorry, may I interject, Lawrence, or is you?
Yeah, just one more comment. I don't think putting the text in for option 3 precludes people from doing option 2. So go ahead.
Yeah, Dave's elaboration on bundling a CoSWID with additional data on a per CoSWID basis, I think makes sense. Option 3 also disables you, prohibits you from using just a single claim. You have to know what you're doing. I think that's fair to say and fair to want, but now you can't mess that up. You can't place a payload CoSWID that's perfectly fine in a evidence label. I guess that's okay. But that is another threshold where you have to can make mistakes. So that's my only small issue with 3. I'm still okay with the evidence payload claim, because I think it's fine, because payload apparently is more on the RIM stuff that we are building with here with Thomas and co, and evidence is more on the EAT stuff, and it makes a lot of sense to say, yeah, this is not evidence when you put it into a EAT. That is, I think, really important. So yeah, I guess 3 is fine for now, and we can see how this works.
Okay, Ned?
Yeah, so CoSWID has a signature attached to it. EAT has a signature attached to it. We have a draft that describes how to do an unsigned EAT. Are any of these options, or all of these options, asserting or assuming that the signature component of CoSWID goes away? Or are we saying that they're nested signatures?
Yeah, either way. So in all of these options, the CoSWID could be signed or unsigned. I mean, the evidence one is a little weird to sign separately. I don't know who would be signing that. And the payload one is presumably signed. So most cases, I would assume evidence ones are unsigned and payload ones are signed. But I wasn't thinking to require it either way. Hank?
Yeah, quick bonus question. And same with CBOR tags. So CBOR tags outside of the envelope and or inside of the envelope for CoSWIDs, is that fine for you also? Because that's how we designed it at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
So there's seems like there's general consensus that using CoSWIDs is a good thing, that we should proceed with CoSWIDs. We like comids or co-rims, or I'm not sure what all they are at this point, are not going to replace CoSWIDs in the long run. Is that right?
Yeah, this speaking to that. Yeah, that is correct. They are not altering them. The co-rim part extends a single item into a CoSWID, but leaves it a CoSWID. So,
Okay.
in order CoSWID can better reference commits, that they can't do this natively. We would have a clunky structure. We want to do it with a neat, orderly structure. So there's a tiny extension to CoSWID with this rim stuff, but that's it. It's the same as before.
And anybody want XML SWIDs? I guess that's a no. Okay, good. So I think the next step is for me to take what I heard here and work on some text. So I'll go do that. Thomas?
Hi, Lawrence. Sorry, Thomas here. So your suggestion would be for a situation where you don't have a file system where to anchor your CoSWIDs to define a CoSWID extension to handle that, or
I think that's one possibility. If that's unworkable, or somebody comes up with some brilliant alternative to CoSWIDs for that, that could also be an option. I don't think just because we pick CoSWIDs, we're picking the one and only format for carrying software descriptions and measurements.
Okay, because for our use case, the PSA one, as you know, going for CoSWID is a bit overkill because the overhead of the encoding and the fact that we need to please the CoSWID format in many respects that are not essential to us, creates this multiple bytes of rubbish, basically, that we just need to put there in order to please the format. So yeah, for the time being, we have defined our own software measurement claim, right? We wanted to have something that is on the standard side, but going CoSWID at this point in time doesn't look like an excellent choice from our point of view. So we will need to figure out something here.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have time for that discussion now, but I think it would be really good to see if we could tweak CoSWIDs to make them fit your uses better. So we have, I don't know, maybe we can, some fields that are mandatory now can be made optional or something like that to do better. I mean, I think that would be cool, but.
We have done that exercise. If you want, we can take that offline and check the numbers.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you for all that discussion. Any other quick comments on CoSWIDs? Okay. Then the last topic, Geary. Next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. Sorry to insert this in here, but just as a disclaimer, I'm the co-chair of the FIDO Alliance IoT Working Group, and we're developing we're pretty far along in developing a device onboarding spec. It's available on our website, and we do have a normative dependency on EAT. One of the things that's been discovered is that the way we are using GUID is our UEID is we're calling it something called the GUID in the spec, Global Universal ID. And our reading was that maps directly to the UEID. So we said that for any EAT payload, we can go ahead and transmit what the spec calls as a GUID in the UEID field. Now, one of the things though with GUID, and I'll apologize for using GUID and the UEID interchangeably because I'm going to get to a reason why they may not be used interchangeably, is that in the FIDO spec, a manufacturer GUID, which is potentially provisioned at the factory, can be replaced by the device owner after onboarding. And if that occurs, then the manufacturer GUID can only be restored through something like a factory reset operation. The current text states that the UEID quote should be permanent. So I've given some guidance to the FIDO working group that we can live with that language because it's a should requirement, and just move on. But the issue is, what does the RATS working group feel similarly on this? And it would be something that I think we need to get resolved before last. We may want to resolve before last call. The issue has been posted. The FIDO IoT working group has proposed text where summarizing, we describe where a UEID could be replaced during a device life cycle. So this is kind of a pesky issue. I think Lawrence may have some words on this, on privacy preservation and UEID as well. So I'll kind of give the floor back over to Lawrence for taking questions. Lawrence, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, my intention was, that UIDs should be permanent. That maybe I should even say must be permanent. That this shouldn't be changing the UID shouldn't be allowed. And then in the discussion on the GitHub issue, I proposed an SU UEID, which is a semi-permanent UEID, which can be change of ownership and factory reset and stuff like that. I also think there's other possibilities for addressing privacy preservation for UEIDs. Like I did an implementation where the requester of the token was authenticated, and UEIDs were per authenticated requester. So I think there's a variety of solutions here. So my thought is to try to find, maybe define a couple of these solutions. But I think this is still an open discussion right now, and I think we should have the discussion. Guy?
Hi, Lawrence. It's Guy. I know there's a lot of complexity when it comes to identification of devices, but I assume you have followed the IEEE 802.1AR spec, which explicitly separates the manufacturer ID from an ID that might be supplied by a device owner. And if there's anything there that's applicable that might help to minimize the number of different variations that we end up with.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that, but I will.
Okay, let me know if I can provide a reference or something.
Yeah, if you would just email me the reference, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
So just a time check. We're just a couple of minutes before we run out of time here. Do you have other slides or other topics?
No.
This is the last topic.
No. So at least on this issue 98, what should I take? I'll ask the chairs. What should I take back to FIDO? Can we live with the spec as it stands, or does or do we need to go offline and revisit and address this before last call?
Well, I mean, I think we have a little time before last call. I don't anticipate it happening that soon. So.
Oh wow, okay. It's holding up the FIDO spec progress. That's what I should have probably mentioned that. So, I think if we're saying that we don't, if the group wants us to go and revisit this, then I'll say that the FIDO spec has to, the use of the FIDO spec for UEID may have to be revisited because the RATS document may evolve. The EAT document may evolve. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. So you're actually talking about the last call of the FIDO document, not the last call of the document.
Well, it's essentially both. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. I mean, I've been through this before, where we've in other standards bodies where we referred to an ID and and made it normative, and then the RFC ended up with substantial changes. So I think, at least for FIDO, we'd like to avoid that. So because then we would have to reopen the spec and change it.
Okay.
It could be
All right.
that.
So
Yeah.
we'll try to address this sooner rather than later then. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, guys, we're out of time, so my suggestion would be to take this issue on the mail list, Lawrence, right? Because minimally, at least, there needs to be clarification on how and the intent of the IDs that we're specifying in the EAT draft.
Yeah.
But given that we're out of time, it'd be good to just continue the discussion on the mail list.
Yeah. Yeah. Or in GitHub.
Well, not everybody looks at the GitHub, so it'd be good to do it both.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And milestones, we did not cover those. I'd love to get an estimate from you, and I'll bring it to the list, Lawrence, in terms of where you think EAT is at. I don't think you're going to make the milestone, and TUDA and some of the other drafts won't make their milestones either. Some of the other ones that are earlier in the milestones, I think, look fine.
Okay.
So we'll do that on list. Thank you.
Okay, so I think with that, we're ready to close. Yeah, I was just looking at the chat. I think we're done. So let's continue the discussions on the mail list. And with that, have a good rest of the week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy.
We were
Thank you.